Okay, so my next research topic was supposed to be sugar. I wanted to go into its details and make that a little bit of a research pack. But then what I realized quickly is that I actually needed some kind of framework to package this work in. Because I could have learned more about sugar or try to figure out carbohydrates or maybe even look into things like seed oils or sweeteners or ultra processed food. But it quickly became clear that what I needed was some kind of framework because I had questions in my mind like, what is this food? What is it made of? What nutrients does it contain? What was done to it? But those were kind of like empty headings, right? And I knew there was some kind of underlying framework that I needed to figure out. So, for example, when it came to nutrients, I knew your macros. I know what macros are. So I know there's carbs and there's fats and there's protein and carbs are broken up into sugars and starches and fiber. So I knew that there was some kind of sub framework, but I needed an overall framework. So I figured out that I need some kind of food roadmap because I needed to understand food as what is it, what was processed, how it was processed, what was the result of that process. And I've been able to figure out what I think will be a helpful tool for my journey, which is something of a food roadmap. So when I look at a particular food, I can then figure out where does it sit on that roadmap? What are the kind of categories and subcategories that I need to look at to figure this stuff out? So what I want to share here is what I think is a helpful framework to set up my research going forward. So, the first thing is what is this food and what role is it meant to play? The second is what is it made from? So, what are the ingredients? The third one is what are the nutrients? And I think that is where your macro and micronutrients can come in. The next one is processing. So, how was it made and how does that affect its structure? That's a really important point. Importantly, the fifth thing is what is the pack trying to make me notice? Because this is where I've constantly been a sucker to fall prey to the marketing claims. Then I want to know what does the evidence actually say? And here is it's a tricky one because every time you go online, you find a whole bunch of people saying different stuff. And here I'd like to add some of my own experiences as well, because this project isn't going to be what the evidence say. I'm not a food scientist. That's not something I can do, but I am a researcher and I am a practitioner of applying different suggestions, if you will, instead of just theorizing how it would affect me. So I want to share some of my own experiences with regard to fasting, with regards to changing diets, and how this has made me feel and what I've gotten out from that. And then the seventh kind of element on the roadmap is how does this fit into real life? The first four lenses is really about describing the food. So what is it? What is it made from? What nutrients does it contain? How was it made? The fifth and sixth lenses are really about what is being told to us about the food, first in terms of the pack and second in terms of the evidence. And the last lens is really how do we actually make decisions without fear mongering or being told that this is magic? So let me give you a quick example before we go into each of these elements, because that's what I want to do. I'm going to have separate videos for each of these elements, each of these seven elements to really get down to what are we talking about and to really get into the complexities. So let's do an example. Let's look at flavored high protein yogurt. So the first one is its identity. That is the type of food. So it's a flavored cultured dairy product, right? And perhaps it's intended as a snack or breakfast component. In terms of its ingredients, so that's the second thing. What is it made of? So perhaps milk cultures, fruit concentrate, milk protein, sweetener, starch stabilizer, depending on the actual product. So just an example. The third one is its nutrients. So it would have protein and carbs and sugar and fat and calcium and sodium, the latter being your micronutrients. The fourth one is about processing. So what was done to it? So there would have been some pasteurization and homogenization and fermentation and concentration and whatever else. And I'm also going to go and figure out what those things are exactly, right? In terms of how it used to be done more primitively and then how it's done on an industrial scale. So food is an identity, ingredients, nutrients, processing, and structure. Those are the things of what the food actually is. Then when we come to the claims, the claim might be it's high protein, no added sugar. And what does the evidence say about these types of products, right? So that's the kind of second lens through which to understand the food roadmap. So, what is the claims and what is the evidence? And then the final lens, which is the seventh point on the roadmap, is what are the contexts in which you may or may not eat this food and how do you adopt it and what are its alternatives, right? So, could it be eaten as a breakfast, dessert, a post-run snack, a convenient replacement for sweets? Yeah. Or do you eat 6 tubs a day? So this is one food through viewing it through these kind of viewing it through this roadmap. And I think by unpacking that, this would then and bringing it all together really, not just saying this has added sugar, so it's bad, or this has supposedly high in protein, so it's good, right? Or how do you analyze this food from these different lenses and then figure out what is better for you? Because who cares what the evidence says? What do we care about as a person, right? And this is for me. I don't care what the evidence says to be taken as a hyperbole. I don't care what the evidence says. What I do care about is how do I get better?